magic marker, permanent marker on your leg so that it can identify you later. Chris continues it.
All right, everybody, I'm Chris Cuomo here, and on NewsNation, we're following two major storms. Hurricane Helene, of course, now expected to be a Category 4 storm when it hits on Florida's west coast. Now, if it is a 4 when it hits, it will be the most powerful storm to do so ever. Its forward progress has slowed down. Why? Because it's wobbling, and because as water temperature changes, so will that pace. But when it slows, there is added time and opportunity for it to strengthen. That said, even if it is a 3, even if it is what it is currently, it is already strong enough to do historic destruction in that region. Remember, even the outer bands can cause deadly surge, and that is going to be the story of this storm based on the estimates. 10 feet, 20 feet of surge. Remember, that's volume of water. So it's not 20 feet more up the beach or into someone's backyard. It's 20 feet this way and moving up. So, you know, that's why you get so concerned. That's why the evacuation order has gone out. Look, I've been in storms like this. I've seen what they do to the communities during and after, and it's frightening. And that's why authorities play scared in order to play it safe and tell people to get out. And a lot of people didn't. And we have lived this kind of scenario before, and we have to hope that they made the right call, because that kind of water can trap you in an instant and keep you trapped. We have reporters here at NewsNation all over the ground. No, we have one of the most extensive network of local stations in the country under the Nexstar banner, and NewsNation gets full benefit of them. You see them out there in their signature blue outfits. I like those. Not enough to be standing in a hurricane where you guys are, but we will check in with them as their situations change throughout the storm, okay? We're going to go to them whenever it warrants. What I will not do is hype the reality with people blowing around on the beach or in some parking lot before there's something worth showing you that is extraordinary. And when there is, we will go to it and we'll explain. But we can certainly fill our time with another storm that is hitting right now, right on top of New York City, specifically on the head of Mayor Eric Adams. He has been indicted for bribery and other crimes involving foreign donations, which are always illegal, okay? Everyone knows that. And there is a cover-up attached here, which not just shows knowledge of wrongdoing, but is criminality in and of itself, says the prosecutors. These are the allegations. Now, it's an interesting analysis because if you read this 50-something page indictment, it's not the most blow-away story of criminality we've heard. It's nothing like Senator Menendez, who this same U.S. attorney went after as well. He made that case against Menendez with the bars. It's not that kind of wild thing, but it is painfully obvious in the accusations, okay? And as a result, you now have the second black mayor in the history of New York City, so there's political relevance here, okay? And you now have the first time in the history of New York City that a mayor has been indicted. Last night, we heard this after nearly a year of investigation, which is also part of the story. This office knows how to make these cases. They have made multiple ones of this kind. This investigation and the lack of transparency to this point has crippled the function of New York City. Adams and his guys haven't been able to do anything. They're afraid to talk to each other, maybe with good reason, But this U.S. attorney, again, this is the fourth big politician, all of them Democrats, by the way, that this man has jammed up, and he has not lost yet. That is U.S. Attorney Damian Williams, and here's what he had to say.
Today we are announcing campaign finance, bribery, and conspiracy charges against Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City. As the indictment alleges, Mayor Adams engaged in a long-running conspiracy in which he solicited and knowingly accepted illegal campaign contributions from foreign donors and corporations. As we allege, Mayor Adams took these contributions even though he knew they were illegal.
Now, you got to remember, Williams and his team are not new to exactly this kind of case, okay? Now it's Adams. It was Senator Menendez, who was convicted. It was Lieutenant Governor Benjamin, who we went after for a very similar kind of thing, okay? And before that, it was Sheldon Silver, who was a legend in New York politics, all of them Democrats, and all of them the same kinds of cases. So that works two different ways, okay? One is, if this guy thinks he has a case, he probably does. He's been nothing but successful. And also, I forgot Representative Chris Collins, who's a Republican. That was a securities related thing. So it was a different kind of criminality than what the other group there represents in the eyes of this prosecutor. 5 charges against Adams at this point. You know, they can always add on. An indictment can have what they have, a superseding indictment. There can be more indictments of other people that bring in different types of criminality. But you see it there, and it is basically, in common language, here's what he did. He went to at least Turkey, and now there may be more countries involved. We don't know. There has been no suggestion of accusation of that officially, let alone any proof of it. There's been no proof of this offered, except for the indictment, and that is a standalone because we haven't seen anything that backs it up yet. We will later in the process. But the story is simple. Guys from Turkey wanted to help Adams, so he would help them. He said, great, found a way to get their money into his campaign, which was almost crazy, certainly politically reckless. I mean, everybody knows foreign money is illegal all the time. So got it in, got millions in matching funds for his campaign, and then they wanted things. And they gave him very nice treatment in hotels and airfare and travel in exchange for that. And he took it, and he gave what they wanted. That's the story, all right? And it turns into conspiracy, solicitation of foreign contributions, wire fraud, moving the money, and bribery, of course. Now, you heard Williams. Here's what Mayor Adams had to say.
This did not surprise us that we reached this day. And I ask New Yorkers to wait to hear our defense before making any judgments. It's an unfortunate day, and it's a painful day. But inside of all of that, it's a day when we will finally reveal why for 10 months I have gone through this. And I look forward to defending myself and defending the people of this city.
Well, that's the interesting political question is what's best for Adams versus what's best for the people in New York City. Look, he's not wrong. We have really gotten very casual with due process in this country, in our media and in our politics. Somebody gets accused of something, we think it's over. And that's not the way the process works, and it's certainly not always the outcome. Now, that said, the Southern District of New York has well over a 90%, in certain cases like these, like 99% conviction rate. But not all their indictments go to trial. Politically, this is a huge problem for Adams, and we're going to cover that tonight as well because it's a very interesting dynamic about what is evolving in the leadership within the black political community, Al Sharpton specifically, and how this is being played out in terms of the larger significance in the election. Very interesting, competing interests, law and order versus political advantage. So let's discuss. Great panel. Former independent counsel and, of course, former federal prosecutor Bob Ray. New York City criminal defense attorney, Paul Callan. And I've asked Robert Ray is going to assess the prosecution side of this. Paul Callan will give us what the likely defenses are and what the prosecution has to do. And also, who else do we have on the panel? I forget now. I'm overwhelmed. Oh, God. Wait. Oh, yeah, I forgot. Wait, who else? Who's this? Oh, yeah. The guy I owe dinner. Stu Kaplan, former FBI special agent. He has been saying on this show pretty much from the beginning, this is only going to end up in one direction, and he is right. So, Stu, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here.
I think I owe some money, too.
I was saving you that. I'll take the hit for all of us. So, Stu, let's start off with you. What do you see in this indictment that you believe makes it, even though it's only probable cause at this stage, that this is a case that this office can make?
I think the biggest concern and the biggest takeaway in reading the 57 pages that I read was the PR narrative that had been put out was that the mayor was fully cooperative with the government and was, trying to cooperate and assist them in their endeavors. Well, it turns out clearly, and when I specifically is addressed his cell phone, changing the password in an effort to defeat the FBI from getting into his phone to download those records or that content. And I think that's very, very telling and very, very important. If you remember, Chris, I told you back in November, if I was his lawyer, I would have taken a very aggressive approach, and I would have got out in front of this, and I would have been sitting down with the prosecutors then, instead of allowing this pot to boil over. As you touched upon, the Southern District is the premier eminent U.S. Attorney's Office in the country, also coupled with the fact that the FBI Public Corruption Unit at 26 Federal Plaza is the best of the best throughout the United States. And when you have a conversion of those two entities, there is no doubt that they have him, in my opinion, just my opinion, that the allegations, I think, are serious. Now, I will also say, what I don't see in the indictment, which is also very telling, is I think they are hopeful that Mayor Adams is going to come in and cooperate, because they know that there are other bad actors that are involved in public corruption. And you are going to see this is just the first shoe to drop. I anticipate another shoe to drop shortly.
But who would be bigger than the mayor?
Well, it's not necessarily bigger. It's the concerted collusion, the efforts across the board as business as usual with the elected officials across the board throughout the city of New York. And I think this United States attorney is interested in cleaning house. And I don't see it politically motivated at all. I just see that for a very long time, this has been the way the city of New York has operated. And I think now you have a prosecutor that's willing to stand up to the historic nature of business as usual. Right. And you're going to see a house cleaning.
Well, look, all of the traditional early indications of bias are not here. This guy is not going after him because he doesn't like Democrats, because he got put in by a Democrat. And it's not because he's going after him because he's a black mayor, because this is a black prosecutor. So, Robert Ray, when you look at this, what distinguishes it as a list of accusations for you in terms of what it seems they know?
Well, at the very least, as you've pointed out, it's a perfect political storm that has, been unfolding for over a year now by way of investigation, which has had its own effects. But what is particularly troubling here, look, everyone knows, as you suggest, that foreign contributions are illegal, corporate campaign contributions are illegal. The strange thing about this one is that there also appears to have been, as alleged, a scheme to collect or bundle small donors, small contributions, to generate numbers sufficient to qualify for matching funds. That's access to the public fisc. And that's a troubling if that's true, that's a troubling allegation that would distinguish this from the ordinary campaign contribution scheme.
So you're referring to the matching funds that they got to the tune of about $10 million. But do me a favor, Robert. Say that in English. If you are not a lawyer, what kind of activity are you describing right now that takes this to a different level, if true, in your opinion?
Well, because then it becomes not just a contribution scheme, but you're accessing public money. You're betraying the public trust. And then the allegations go on to suggest that it's not just about campaign contributions that Mayor Adams was about, but he was also in an attempt to feather his own nest. Some of that stuff may strike you as somewhat minor, like, fancy hotel rooms and travel reimbursements and so forth. But nevertheless, that's still corruption. It forms the basis of the bribery allegations. And then further, the allegation is that it was tied to, setting up this consulate in the city of New York for the, for the Turkish government. So it's a combination of things that make it appear, if the allegations are true, right, that it's not just about receiving illegal campaign contributions. And, it's the government's burden, of course, to prove that those were knowingly received and that you knew it was illegal. But when it starts to get to more complicated things like, well, it wasn't just about receiving federal money, it was also about getting matching funds in a scheme to essentially disguise the true nature of the contributions in the first place. That's a problem.
Right. And you may, those of you who've been watching me for a while, you have heard, this sounds familiar to you, and it should. Rob Ray and I spent a lot of time discussing in the early phases of the Trump investigations that if federal authorities think that you're getting any kind of help from foreign anything in an American campaign, they go after it at 100 miles an hour. Here, it's obvious if you're going to have money coming in. But even if it's help, remember I have dirt on Hillary, I have dirt on that. If someone comes to you from another country and says that, the feds see it as like, it is a very big target for them. All right, so now, Paul, let's flip it. Let's take the last part of what Robert said and offer the other part of this narrative on top of what should matter most to us, okay? This is the first stage. This is probable cause. This is the lowest standard, okay? And yes, the feds have an amazing track record on these kinds of cases, but we don't know anything yet. They've shown us nothing, and we've heard nothing in defense. And, Paul, the thing that does stick out to me is the title of these crimes are heavy. The details are not blow-away impressive. $100,000 over 10 years in different kinds of upgrades and suites and stuff from a lot of different countries, but from Turkey specifically. Okay, it's not an impressive number. Menendez had gold bars worth hundreds of grand in his house. And then it's,
Absolutely.
well, you took in foreign money. Oh, okay, but you know what? Everybody plays the system. What do you see as the categories of his defense?
Well, I think you started off in the right place by saying this is not gold bars and bags of cash being hidden in a closet. It's a lot of it looks like nitpicking to some degree, because you have, the mayor's getting bumped up from being a regular passenger to business class on an international flight. It doesn't surprise me. He's the mayor of New York City. The other thing you have to keep in mind, and I think he'll work on a jury about this, is we're probably the biggest international city on earth. We've got 136 diplomatic missions in this city. Part of the job of the mayor of New York City is to appeal to the rest of the world and interact with other nationalities and ethnic groups. So that's just part of the job. And if, somebody from Park Slope in Brooklyn came and was asking for a favor, he'd do that right away. Well, he's doing favors for other constituents. They happen to be from other countries. And it's a different situation, I think, than you would see in other cities. So I think we have to wait and see what develops here. Mayor de Blasio, who I've never been much of a fan of, was under investigation himself, as has been pretty much every other mayor of the city. This is the first guy to get indicted criminally. And what de Blasio said is, it looks shocking now, but you got to wait and see the details. He's presumed innocent, and he has fought this from the beginning. He said, I'm going to fight this. I'm going to stand here. He's not said, I'm trying to negotiate here. So he thinks he's in the right. I see some problems in the indictment right off the bat. There could be statute of limitations problems. Most federal crimes have only 5-year statute of limitations. It sounds like some of this stuff reaches back before that. There are intermediaries between Mayor Adams and the person giving the money, staffers. You may have the mayor saying eventually, if it went to trial, well, I didn't know that this was being done. And you also have things like the hotels, for instance, not charging him as much money as they would charge normal citizens. Well, that may not be a bribe to the mayor so much as the hotel wanting to attract the mayor of New York in one of their top suites. It's good publicity for the hotel. Trump would tell you that. So I think you can look at the entire thing and find that there are problems with some of the details, and that if you found an appealing New York jury who understands that the mayor of New York City has to appeal to a huge constituency, an international constituency, maybe he's got a better chance of walking away from this than it looks like right now.
Well, I'll tell you what, he will definitely testify if this goes to trial. I think we could both bank on that.
Yeah.
And now the question becomes, outside of the law and investigative nature of this, now we're also talking politics. His defense has not been mentioned as sophisticated as Paul's has. It's all about being targeted, okay? And targeted by his own. And even the process of this investigation, he will point to as proof of that. How does that lay out? That's our next segment. Robert Ray, thank you very much. Stu, I have much respect for you on this, and I look forward to you helping me understand it as we go from phase to phase. And I hope you like to eat, brother, because we're going to have a big meal. You were right. He got indicted. Paul Callan, you're going to stay. Help me on the political side because you understand the dynamics well within the city. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, we have to look at the politics of this, okay? Yes, no one's above the law, but every case is different based on context. And here, there are huge political implications. And when we come back from break, you're going to hear sound from one of the major black leaders in the country. And I want you to hear how he sees this situation. Next. Oh, and don't forget the storm. We're watching Helene. We'll go there as soon as anything happens.
Anti-black. You are disgrace to all black people in this city. The things that you have done are unconscionable. You hurt our schools. Our streets are dirty. Our children are harassed by the police. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous.
So that was supposed to be Adams' presser to be on the offensive, and yet he was not just under attack by the USA. He was attacked by community leaders also. One of the voices you heard is Hawk Newsom. He started BLM New York and Black Opportunities, and he is a known political figure within the city, and he's going to join us tonight to discuss why he's going at Adams when Adams is looking for support, okay? Now, you can't ignore the politics, and really, I think it's extraordinary as an opportunity for you to see politics in real action. We heard from a major black leader in America, Al Sharpton. You may like him, you may not. His role in marshaling the black vote, especially in New York City and other metropolitan areas, is significant, okay? So he is now relevant in terms of how he sees this. And it's interesting for what he doesn't say on two levels. Listen to him first.
We have to look at the big picture. We're in the middle of a consequential campaign between Vice President Harris and Trump. And we also have to look at how Keem could become Speaker and deal with also this situation. And if you're not prepared to take on tough choices in black leadership, you shouldn't have aspired to be one.
Well, I mean, this is, I hope you get what he's not saying there. One, he didn't say anything about what the crimes are and their significance. I mean, this is a set of accusations that goes to venal wrongs. Great word, venal. This mentor of mine just offered it up to me about this. From the Latin venalis, to steal. A venal act is where you make it clear that you are for sale. And that is the highest crime in politics. Now, it is also a crime in the law. So Sharpton doesn't mention any of that. Doesn't mention that due process was involved here, investigations. It's all about the politics. That Adams may not be able to get the black support, at least from Al Sharpton, because it may be bad for what he wants in the bigger elections. Let's bring in the reporter who broke the story, Greg Smith of The City, Democratic strategist, longtime New Yorker, legend on the Democrat side, Hank Scheinkoff, and Hank Newsom, co-founder of New York Black Lives Matter, Inc., and I wanted to bring back Paul Callan, former New York City prosecutor, understands the politics very, very well. First, Hank, is my analysis right in terms of what's interesting about this dynamic, and can Adams survive this even at this point?
He can survive. The question is for how long, and it depends on how much chaos there is in city government on a daily basis. That's the great definer. Will people try to push him out if things become very chaotic? He'll get the message from within his own community, African Americans and other Caribbean Americans and other people who depend on him or who see him as a model. And he'll get the message from the big people who run the place. I mean, we're talking about 2,000 people who really run New York. They can't afford to have chaos. It just doesn't work that way. And he will get the message if things are not being performed properly.
Greg, he is presenting as very confident in his defense. Now, what we know of it is, at this point, really has nothing to do with the allegations in the indictment and everything to do with why they were investigating him in the first place. He says, I spoke up against Biden about the migrant problem, and now this happened. Is that getting traction?
I mean, I don't understand that argument. I mean, if you know anything about prosecutors, they hate to lose. So they pick very carefully the cases they're going to bring. And I have to tell you, my experience with covering Southern District and the Eastern District, both of the U.S. attorney's offices here in New York City, is that they don't want to pick a case that's going to fall apart. And in this particular case, they have spent a long time. They took his phones, plural, just about a year ago. So they've been looking at his phones, and then they're looking at other people's databases and pulling this together. But my point is that that argument doesn't make any sense, because really it's always about the same thing. It's about, what do you got? What's the evidence? Mm-hmm. And in this particular case, I don't know if you read this thing, it's clear. They're looking at text messages between people, which is contemporaneous evidence that I don't see how, like, Joe Biden telling Damian Williams that you got to go after this guy. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Sorry. I don't buy it.
Listen, that's exactly why I have you on here, Greg, is that it's for your gut, man. It's your gut. You know these stories. You know what's familiar. Now, Hawk, I want to talk about yours as well. Sharpton is looking at this situation and saying, what's best for us, in quotes, overall. Hakeem, he's talking about, obviously the New York representative, Hakeem Jeffries, he could be Speaker of the House. If Adams makes all Democrats look dirty, maybe that affects us nationally. What do you think about that line of thinking? And why was it important for you, in the face of this indictment, to let Adams know that he's done plenty wrong besides this?
Thanks for having me, Chris. I would like to say that politically, black people are in a civil war. This national election, even what's happening here locally, there's the elite, the upper class blacks who are pretty much calling all the shots with these politicians. And then there's us in the streets, the people who are affected by Eric Adams' stance on homelessness, how he arrested homeless people and threw their belongings away. The people who feel the hit when, under his administration, rent was raised 3 times. The people who are stopped and frisked every day by his police department, the same police department and commissioner that he backed even when they were burying chokings. Like, I just don't understand how these quote unquote black leaders could overlook a mayor who supports cops who cover up chokings when everybody was for George Floyd and Eric Garner. I just don't get it, Chris.
Well, I appreciate it. You certainly get the concerns of the community, and it's important that your voice be heard, because right now there's going to be a spotlight on him and what he means to every demographic. Paul, how strong is look at how they investigated me. If this Damian Williams is so good at these cases, why did he drag this one out, if not to hurt me politically for payback? And his idea that he is looking forward to defending. How do you read both of those?
Well, he's very wise politically, because we have to remember he was elected as a law and order black mayor in New York City. And the politics of this and the way it interacts with the courts is, if he gets knocked out of office, he gets convicted, or if he gets impeached, let's say, by the city council, the person who's in line to become the next mayor is the public advocate, Jermaine Williams, who's very, very much to the left of the mayor. And I suspect that a lot of the jurors who are going to be sitting on his case are not going to be against law and order and getting the crime rate down in New York City. And that's why they like Eric Adams. And he's going to say, I've been tough, and now they're trying to take me out because I've been tough, and I don't take the normal position that the left wing of the Democratic Party endorses. And I think that's how he's going to work the politics into the jury selection process and the trial of the case.
Interesting. The question is, in these cases, Damian Williams isn't known for making deals. So this is going to be an interesting to see this play out. Gentlemen, thank you for the perspective. And also, as we learn more, we will talk more. The problem is when people come to conclusions in the first step of the process. So thank you each and all for your take on the politics. It's certainly an equal part of this story. Let's take a break. 2 storms, okay? And both of them could have major implications. The one that you got to care about more, though, right, once we get past the silliness of politics, is to keep an eye on Florida, because those are our brothers and sisters down there. And if they get hurt the way half as bad as what's being anticipated, they're going to need us. And they're going to need us early and often. Now, I got a great guest for you. okay? Another man that took to the podium today, of course, former President Donald Trump. He's making his case, and he is focusing his case much more now. I mean, for him. What is he focusing on and why? I have someone who is giving him the roadmap. Next.
She says, well, I wasn't the border czar. She was. Why didn't she fix it almost 4 years ago? She's got no plans, got no talent, got no ability to do it.
Donald Trump is focusing his attacks more and more on immigration. And the best explanation is probably in the polls, okay? Snapshot of a moment in time. Yes, when we're doing preference polls, but inside a campaign, they do all kinds of polling. And messaging is a very specific target. And they seem to have found theirs in the Trump campaign. And we have exactly the right guest for this, because we have John McLaughlin, who is a pollster for Donald Trump. And he is taking us through. John, pleasure to see you. Appreciate you coming on. Help us understand in layman's language, all right? You're not talking to just, Cuomo kid, but what is it that you understand in the trends that is speaking to what we're hearing from the former president?
By the way, one of the things that's unconventional for Donald Trump, he's a unique individual in the history of politics in the United States. But I'll tell you what, he does what he thinks is right, and then his pollsters have to track him after it. So when you're talking about immigration and trade, the way he talked about it 8 years ago when he announced for president, that was him. That was what he believed in. And right now in the polling, his gut instinct was right, because when you look at where he was as president 4 years ago when he had secured the border and illegal crossings were way down, it wasn't a big issue versus him and Biden, because he solved that problem, or it was a long way to solve it. Since that time, when they opened the border and you've had millions and millions of illegal immigrants here, where it's not just affected the southern communities in the United States, it's affected us here in New York City and here in New York State. It's affected people all over the country in rural areas you wouldn't expect. People that have had problems with crime and problems with taxes that they can't afford to provide the support services to millions of illegal immigrants. So we've seen that. So again, like when you take a poll, what's crazy is you take a poll in New York State, which is way removed from the border, although we got a northern border with Canada, immigration is a top issue. And it's a top issue for the congressional races in New York. It's a top issue in the swing states, like Pennsylvania.
And we've never seen that.
No, never seen that before.
I've never seen immigration high up at all, let alone at a top. So we're in a different time. You guys have isolated it. Certainly the high ground for him also. Let me bring in a couple of better minds. We have Erin Perrine, who's, her Republican strategist, Axiom Strategies. And hey, it's good to see you, Erin. Thank you for being with us. And Chris Hahn, who has a great name for his podcast, The Aggressive Progressive. I love it. Every time I say it, I get a kick out of it. All right, so first, let me bounce to you, Chris, on this, which is the theory of the case on your opponent's side is people care about this in unprecedented fashion, and your party sucks on this issue and has been on the watch during a downturn on this issue, and that is what they're going to mine to get to Election Day. How threatening is that?
I see it as one of the top issues in the campaign, but I think people are pretty much made up their mind on that issue, and it's in the 20s. I think that Kamala Harris is going to the border because she does want to attack him on that issue and blame him for some of the inaction that has happened in Congress on the issue, because as we all know, they had a bill negotiated by conservative senators that Donald Trump stopped, and it would have added border agents. It would have added administrative law judges. It would have made it easier to send people home who claimed asylum but didn't deserve it. And he stopped it. And frankly, the only measure he took as president that actually closed the border down and actually slowed immigration to a level lower than it is today was COVID and taking emergency actions that were available to him during COVID. And frankly, people didn't want to come here because he did such a bad job protecting the country from COVID. They'd rather stay home where they were safer.
Two different things. His handling of COVID is, something that for whatever reason just doesn't resonate in this election.
Nobody cares.
Even though it changed all our lives. But it is not just what he did during COVID. The genius, and it was, of Homeland Security to make home country agreements, Chris, that cut the flow where it originates was vital. And when Biden came in, he canceled all those deals, which is not unusual, right? He wants to negate the previous guy, but it was a big mistake. Now, the prospect, Aaron, of Harris going to the border to try to change the narrative, what does this open up from a plus-minus perspective on your side?
I think this is really a bad strategy move by Kamala Harris, and one that's just going to benefit Donald Trump. As vice president, she's been to the border, once? And she was flippant about it before that and said, well, I also haven't been to Europe, as there were millions of people illegally streaming into the United States. This is an issue that Donald Trump has led on since he came down the escalator in 2015. He has always talked about securing the southern border of the United States and stemming the flow of illegal immigration. For Kamala Harris to pick her worst issue and try to make that into a positive issue, I understand the political calculus, but I don't understand the mental calculus, because the Trump team is going to be all over this and able to more aggressively push their message about her failures than she is going to be able to do to try to sell the American people that she's doing better.
All right, Chris, give me a quick response, and then I want to go back to McLaughlin. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a game of inches. If she takes away 1% of the voters who are immigration voters who are going for Trump, that's a huge advantage to her. So, yes, go there and attack him on his strength.
She's not going to be able to do that.
She's doing it.
Right, she's doing it.
Well, look, that's the effort. That's the effort that she's trying to make. Whether it works or not, we'll see, right? I mean, that's the good thing about an election. You're going to get a final poll that will be 100% dispositive of the outcome. Now, McLaughlin, let me ask you something that you see in the numbers on this issue. It is true, as we all know, thanks to Senator McConnell, Trump called guys, his guys called guys and said, I don't want that bill to go. I want to campaign on the problem. Okay, we know that. For anyone else, it'd be a death sentence, but not for Trump. What do you see in the numbers about how people can look at that, that's screwed up that he did that, and still believe that on this issue, he's preferable?
Well, by the way, Chris is a master spinner, but I'll tell you, that bill that the president killed was on principle, because, they allowed 5,000 illegals into the country every day. That's almost 2 million people, and their track record is not to be trusted. Plus, you've got, there were provisions in there for amnesty. Donald Trump spoke about it today at 4:30 at his press conference. There were a lot of good policy reasons to kill that bill, which is why he killed it, because he wouldn't have signed off on it. And, may have had some Republicans faked out. But let me tell you, that was a bad bill because it was amnesty.
And you're spinning now, my friend. I'm getting dizzy.
That was a good little twist. Aaron, I give you the last word. Go ahead.
Yeah, there are two things to consider when it comes to that bill. One, the American people, even after that bill failed in Congress, stood there and still say that Donald Trump is better on immigration than Kamala Harris is. Right. So the Democrat fallacy that this is going to be a negative against him isn't tracking in polling. So Democrats are using it as a boogeyman, and the American people aren't buying it whatsoever that this was Donald Trump's fault. And two, for Democrats to say that Donald Trump doesn't lead on this issue. Remember, Donald Trump has before said to Republicans, don't vote on this bill, don't vote on that bill. The continuing resolution to keep the government open this week was one he said to vote against, and Republicans stood against him and kept the government open. So when the policy is one that Republicans do not agree with, they vote against a bill. And when they do agree to it, they vote with the bill, even if Donald Trump says one way or the other.
Seats in the House of Representatives if they voted against the bill, because they would be blamed for the closing of the government.
All right. Now, look, I think this is an interesting issue. I think it's going to keep manifesting itself. And the only thing I just want to remind Yeah, he may have had policy reasons. It wasn't a great bill, but Republicans worked on it. It may well have died in the House because it was coming out of the Senate. But we know from McConnell why he wanted it killed. His guys said they want to campaign on the problem. And that's okay. That's politics. All right. Thank you to everybody. Aaron, thank you. Mr. McLaughlin, you're welcome back for the duration, by the way. I would love to get your head on the state of play all through. And aggressive progressive. I just love it. Chris Hahn, thank you very much. 3 minutes and 45 seconds. When we come back, let's go to the storm that you got to care about everyone it affects, which is Hurricane Helene. All right? If this is half of what they say it could be, this is going to be a very significant situation for a lot of people for a long time. So we're going to check in on the ground next. All right, let's get to the ground tracking Hurricane Helene. Just a little bit of a plug for us. You know, NewsNation is part of Nexstar. They own the most local television stations in the country. So we get great reach in these kinds of situations to get you on the ground. And we have NewsNation Miami bureau correspondent Xavier Walton. He's live in Perry, Florida. We also have our national correspondent Mills Hayes live from Panama City Beach. It's good to have you both. Thank you for being out there for us. Xavier, I'll start with you. What's the situation?
Well, you see it, Chris. You know what? The rain really did just start. Winds picking up, too. And here's what I'm going to show you right here. Take a look at that light up there. That's going to be a big concern. Coming down with sheets of rain. The power lines, winds here in Perry. We're on the dirty side of this storm. What does that mean? Well, we're going to get the brunt of it, too, right? And it's shifted just a little bit east. That's something that people are extremely concerned about. A lot of people behind us, they evacuated, and for good reason. They were worried about the storm surge.
All right, Xavier, I know you got some hours there, but those outer bands not only soften the situation, but they can do damage all themselves. Be careful, you and the team. Thank you very much for that. Mills, let me check in with you. A drier situation for you, but where are you? What does that mean for the path of the storm? What's the big concern?
Yeah, hey, Chris. Well, I'm here in Panama City Beach, so we're actually right outside of the path of the hurricane. We are in the area that's under a tropical storm warning, so you're starting to see that wind pick up. We've seen that rain pretty much go throughout the day for hours now, but it is a little bit drier, as you mentioned. We are starting to see, like I said, that wind and some more flooding starting to happen over on these roads over here as well. But this area, we're told, is really where they're keeping a lot of the electrical linemen. There are dozens, about 10 miles from here, there are dozens of electrical vehicles, linemen waiting here in this area where it's going to be a little bit less of an issue when it comes to weather. So they'll be here and just kind of waiting for the weather to be able to see where they need to respond and where they need to help people, because right now there are hundreds of thousands of people that are without power. Chris?
No, very good points, Mills. You know, they're going to have to figure out how to respond to things. Where are they putting the equipment for that? Can it get out, or is it affected? And as you pointed out, you don't need rain to have storm surge. So if the wind overwhelms that shoreline, you're going to see surge there as well. All right, both of you, stay safe, keep your teams safe, and good luck throughout the night to you and everybody on the ground there, okay? Xavier, Mills, and the rest of the team will be covering this for the duration. When we come back, we'll hand it off to Dan Abrams. Very important night.